Hey there, welcome to another Tesla Motors Club podcast. My name is Lewis.
I'm Doug.
And I'm Mike.
On today's episode, we're going to hear from Elon on when is FSD finally going to come out. We'll give some updates, our impressions of the Starship launch that happened on 420. There's news around GM and the Chevy Bolt, some updates on Tesla's 4680 battery cells, and more, starting episode 40, which is right now. Birds and things. Good. How are you gentlemen doing today?
All right.
We're doing great. How are you?
High energy introduction by Lewis there.
Yeah, that was stellar. So only been on 40 of these, right? Alrighty. So with that wonderful introduction, I would like to give an introduction to a new team member onto the TMC podcast, a gentleman by the name of Seb. So I see the hat. I love the Tesla hat. He's got Tesla swag ready to go.
Yeah, he's just trying to make a good first impression.
Yeah. we need someone that's really pro Tesla.
Hey, I'm part of the club.
Yeah. Right. So, Seb, how about you give us a brief rundown on who you are? Let the folks know your Tesla background.
Cool. Hey, guys. Thanks for having me on. My name is Seb. And yes, I am wearing the hat because if we're talking about that Cult of Elon documentary, I feel like Doug's going to throw some shade. I gotta be pro Tesla here playing today that role. I have a 2015 P85D, so long time Tesla owner. And yeah, thanks for having me.
Awesome.
Welcome aboard.
Welcome. Alrighty. So speaking of Cult of Elon, not to jump into the we're not going to jump into the doc just yet, but so Elon did announce in the recent earnings call some news on FSD.
He did.
What are we hearing? What are we hearing, Mike? When's FSD coming out?
It's the same. It's the same tune. He said he was saying if everything works out well and does what it should do, that we should have FSD by the end of the year. He swears. Pinky promise. Yeah.
And he's only done that for the past.
I think it's from day one, hasn't it? Well, give him props for being consistent.
Consistent for the last 9 years or so.
But yeah, he seemed a little more upbeat about it this time. That we're now on single stack and it's out in general release as far as the beta goes. So he seems a bit more optimistic about his prediction.
Did we have over/under odds on this? What are we thinking, Doug? You think FSD by the end of the year?
I can't. No, it won't be. It won't be by the end of the year. But I will say that it's converging. We're getting there. We'll talk about Starship later. But there used to be a plot. I think who did it? I can't remember. But there was a plot about launching of the James Webb Space Telescope, and there was how many years of delay or when do we expect to launch and what the date is. And we saw them eventually converge and pretty much, and that came out years before the thing actually launched, but it very well predicted when it actually happened. So we could try to make that graph here, except Elon always says next year. So I don't know that it's really gonna work right, but I do feel that it's converging.
Sure.
And it's getting better. Again, I'm happy with Navigate on autopilot pretty much as it is in terms of how it affects my commute, knowing that I still need to pay attention and it makes driving better. Current FSD, we'll see. I haven't used the latest version yet, but that's been a bit of a mixed bag, and part of it is me getting used to it. And I still use it when I can, but my passengers don't appreciate it. So
yeah.
Have you been using it, Mike?
I do use it. I've been using it more and just trying to give it a fair try.
You think end of the year is likely?
No.
Okay.
In my case, it works really well on the highway. I love it on the highway. I despise it in city.
Okay.
And to be clear, I'm in kind of an older suburbia, and the roads are not the best at times and all that, but it struggles in town. And yeah, I find it to be more work to kind of babysit it than just drive the car in town.
Gotcha.
So until we can work around that, I'm not convinced it's ready for prime time.
See, my life is simple, right? I'm running AP1, can't do none of that.
Can't do it anyway. So,
but so Seb, you've got Mobileye then for your car, right? At Autopilot 1. How's that working for you? Do you use that regularly, or is it?
Yeah, all the time. I mean, most of my miles are highway. I'm at 60,000 now. So, I don't drive the car like excessively every year, but like 12,000 miles roughly. And 80% of that is autopilot. It works great. Excellent.
Yeah. See, last year, Seb, I put 22,000 on my Model 3.
Wow. Last year I put 2,500 on my Model S Plaid. Just throwing it out there because I drive a lot.
The nice thing about Autopilot 1 with Mobileye is there's no delay when you flick the turn signal. It just instantly changes lanes, right? Whether or not somebody's in that lane or not.
Ouch.
Sound like a good thing.
I like that.
Wow.
It does check, but it uses the ultrasound sensor, so I don't know how reliable that really is, but it works okay,
Oh, so it waits till they're 8 inches away, then it decides somebody's there.
That's right.
So Seb, you're not using the obviously AP1, so you're not using the FSD beta and all that, but you've obviously been following along. What do you think the likelihood of by end of this year? You think Elon's maybe right?
Well, I just want to know if the robo-taxis are coming at the end of the year too.
Yeah, that's
forget the robot. I just want auto summon to work. I mean,
so let's be fair. We should be fair to fully qualify what Elon said. He did say, and I hesitate to say this.
Yes.
So he did qualify his own statement with that.
He did.
And then say, but I think we'll do it this year. So
yeah,
I mean, it's got to be comical to even him, right?
Right.
To look at the compilations of him saying, by the end of the year, by the end of next year, or whatever. I'm fully confident within 6 months. I've seen all those sort of variations, so it's kind of funny to see. Oh, by the way, though, there is some lawsuit, right?
There's a couple actually.
But I just thought it was funny. There's a comment by his lawyer that said, we can't necessarily, accept statements that have been said in the past because they might have been deep fakes. Like,
that's a stretch.
Really?
That's a stretch.
Well, my memory isn't deep faked. I mean, I remember when he said all those things.
He was on stage talking to people in the real life. Yeah.
Oh yeah, at the D conference, all things digital conference or code conference, whichever one, Recode. Yeah, come on, these are all in front of people
Deep-faked.
That's not deep faked. We remember. You can't.
Oh man. All right. So Elon says end of this year. We are all pretty much in agreement. Probably not. However, I think we all pretty much agree it has gotten much better. It is improving. It's definitely getting there. They're making progress, which is awesome.
And Elon did say 2 steps forward, 1 step back. So even he's aware that, this is a struggle. And he's mentioned in the past that this is significantly harder than they all originally thought it would be. So
for sure.
He's acknowledging the trouble.
I have to say, like, I've used it a fair bit, the latest one, 0.6, and I think it's working pretty great for me. I have had a few things where it did some questionable stuff. Most notably, it driving in Texas, where I am in Austin, there's a lot of roads where it's like, 4 lanes, so 2 going each direction, and then in between there's the double yellow line, like turn lane where you can pull into, and it'll randomly decide that, hey, I need to change lanes into the turn lane as a normal lane. Like, I'm not turning, I'm just going, and it just turns the blinker on, and I'm like, oh no, what's it doing? And I have to stop it from turning. So that's the only bad thing I've had in the last 2 weeks. Otherwise, it's driven pretty well, pretty surprisingly, even in some road areas with construction and stuff where the visibility is not great, the lines aren't great, it's doing a pretty good job.
Now, I gotta ask you, have you had a chance to drive it in any kind of inclement weather?
Not like, well, certainly not snow or anything like
No.
that, but I have had it in rain a little bit, though I've done some rain where it's been overcast. And historically, the older stuff used to just say, I can't do it. I can't see
Right.
well enough.
Right.
This actually hasn't turned off. It actually did work while
That's
it was
interesting,
raining a
'cause-
little bit, and I was kind of impressed. I expected if it gotten like much worse, it probably would have shut off, but it didn't. It kept going and it worked well.
So the last 2 times I've done it in the rain here, both times it would say adverse weather, can't engage, or something like that. And after a
Mhm.
mile, it like the camera's cleared enough where it says, "Oh, now I can go."
Mm.
So I almost feel like I got to be a pilot, and do a pre-flight check of my car, and clean all the lenses before I actually get into the car.
Yeah. I mean, it's going to be an ongoing issue. I'm sure they'll end up with little wipers and all kinds of fancy ways of magnetic fields and things to try to repel the
Yeah,
water off, right?
That's right.
Let me ask you, Lewis, how would you feel, when the car unexpectedly decides to put on the blinker and change lanes? What if it explained its rationale to you? Like
It does. So
It does.
it does pop up a thing that says, I'm doing this to follow the route, or I'm doing this to move into a faster lane, or I'm doing this to avoid a slow lane. It
But it's a
does do
center
that.
divider. You're not supposed to
And
be
that's
there.
how I know it's wrong, because it literally pops up with the rationale, doing this to follow route. And I'm like, to follow the route, it's a straight, what are you doing? They do pop up a rationale, and I was, in those cases, it was wrong. Like the rationale was just completely wrong. So but I mean, hey, the voice thing, you disengage, you hit the button, you
I've done
explain
that.
what happened.
Yep.
And hopefully the late auto, the labelers, they'll go in and they'll mark it and it'll improve. So overall, pretty happy with the rate of improvement.
Well, I will say it's been pretty consistent about failing to stay in when you got a multi left turn,
Mhm.
inside, outside. In fact, we even got 3 turns, 3 lanes around here where 3 cars can turn left. It seems to have issues with that because it consistently wants to drift to the far right. Even if I'm in the most inner left side, it wants to drift to the far right consistently.
Gotcha. That sounds a little scary, but
it's a little, it gets the heart rate going.
A little nerve-wracking
in the morning.
Yeah, I mean, normally in the turn, like it has a follow car, right? It'll mark a car gray, like a different color.
Yep.
And that's the lead car that is trying to follow. And so it'll try to do the path. I've noticed where that car does something stupid, the human driver like turning in a really dumb way, then my car will try to copy it. And it's just like, well, you can't really blame the car for that. But
right, it's a lemming, so it's just going to follow along.
Yeah. But normally it does a pretty good job.
Oh well.
Alrighty.
We'll see what happens. He's got 8 months to sort
see what
it all
happens.
out.
Didn't we have a challenge of like what's going to come out first, FSD or the Cybertruck? Are we still?
Well, Cybertruck's supposed to be September.
I think Cybertruck is definitely looking like it's going to win, right?
Yep.
So we'll see. All right. So Starship launch. We would have talked about this last week, but we did not air last week. But it was really exciting. So it happened 10 days ago. 10 days ago, Starship launch. I thought it was fantastic. Doug, how was this launch for you? I mean,
I thought it was pretty cool. I mean, we did talk a couple weeks ago, and it was supposed to happen the next day, right? We talked on Sunday. It was
right.
scheduled
They had
to
to push
happen
it
on Monday. And at that time, I said, you know what? I bet that this thing is going to get delayed till Thursday, so that he can launch it on 420. And that's exactly what happened.
We have the chat logs to prove this, by the way. Doug called this before the launch. He's like, they're going to scrub it. He's going to move it to 420 because he wants to launch on 420.
I do. I mean, this is a big, expensive, scientific exploration endeavor. But I do think there's probably some influence. Like, yeah, why don't we just send it on 420? Like, was there any reason to pause? Like, yeah, let's just send it. And they did. It was pretty spectacular. I thought it was great.
To be fair, it almost didn't go off on 420, right? They did hold the launch 40 seconds out.
Briefly.
Well, that's just more evidence, right? It's like, let's just send it.
The video is impressive as hell. You have to admit.
Yeah. SpaceX does this better than anybody else, and I really wish the rest of the industry would catch up in terms of the cameras that are available actually on the on the vehicle and the coverage. I think they do a great job. Even just tests. This was just a test. A lot of companies would hide these tests, or wouldn't make them so public, especially when they expect it to blow up. The only goal here was clearing the launch tower so that they
Which it did spectacularly.
so that they didn't blow up the chopsticks and all that expensive infrastructure there. Though it did blow up the pad.
Oh man, the pad took a beating, including a couple cars nearby.
Yeah, and I have to think they didn't
knew it was going
expect
to
it
happen.
I mean, but there was plenty of evidence and plenty of people expected this was going to happen, and you need like either a deluge system or a flame trench or something, and Elon a few years ago said, "Yeah, we're going to try not to try to get away without having that." There's
the argument being on Mars, they won't have it. On the moon, they won't have it. So they should see what happens without it, right? That's fair argument.
Right.
And well, Doug, you know so much more about this than me, but honestly, my initial thought was, are they doing this on purpose because they're thinking the thing's going to blow up? So why would you do anything to the launch pad to protect it? But I think you didn't think that was accurate.
Well, I mean, there's something to that. I mean, they knew they had a plan to have some sort of deluge system. There was a plan to install like a water-cooled steel plate. And why excavate it when when the rocket can do it for them? So I suppose instead of having to dismantle stuff, they just rebuild. You can make that argument. I don't know that they had that plan, but overall, I thought it was a very spectacular launch. I'd say that the most concerning thing for me would be that that the flight termination system didn't work as expected. If you watch the video, at some point they lose thrust vector control.
It does
dilute. Dude, it does like 4 or 5.
It's like 2. Yeah.
To be fair, it was supposed to do half of one. It was supposed to do like half of one, but you're right. It kept going. Right, and so I'm watching it like, how have they not blown this thing up yet? And in reviewing and in the days since it happened, it turns out the automatic flight termination system did actually engage, but it just wasn't sufficient enough to blow up the thing. So the structural integrity of the rocket was better than expected. And if you can see in the video right now, you sort of see some gas coming out the side of the body of the thing. That's actually holes punctured in from these little shaped charges for the flight termination system, and they blow holes in the tanks, but the tanks still had enough pressure in them that they maintained integrity for another like 50 seconds or so,
which is impressive given the G-forces on that thing.
It's impressive. I think what they'll have to do, and often the flight termination system is it's described as unzipping the thing. They'll have a full sort of line of a shaped charge that will span between the fuel and the oxidizer tank. So instead of just a single hole being blown into, it'll be a whole line that the whole thing just unzips itself. And they'll probably have to move to a more aggressive flight termination system like that. Because really, as soon as the thing deviates from the planned path, you need it to blow up so that it's not going to go on some populated area or some other protected area. They have a whole keep out zone over the water, but so you got to make sure all the debris or anything that happens to fall from the sky ends up in that area, not on top of somebody's house, like they do in China, where the first stage will just drop on somebody's house with hydrazine in it, and so anyway, unfortunately, this thing, it's methane and oxygen, and nothing particularly toxic, things that will burn or evaporate
No,
relatively
the only
clean.
toxic thing is how many pounds of it's going to hit you.
And how cold it is.
Yeah, what is the toxicity of either an aluminum rocket landing on your
landing
head,
on you?
or a chunk of concrete blasted from the launch pad?
Well, and you got to admit, I mean, speaking to that, if you look at the pictures from the pad, it's impressive what that rocket engine removed, from the pad. I mean, concrete, dirt, stone, just about everything. Hit the tanks on the side, hit the guy's car that was videoing, I don't know, some 1,000 yards away.
Yeah, it was exciting. So there has been a bit of discussion about, the thing blew up. How's that a success?
It cleared the pad. That was what they wanted.
It cleared the pad, and it's just important to point out that this is a very different program than, say, SLS. Whereas
True.
if that had blown up, that would have been a big deal. Would have possibly been the end of the program. Legacy space often is you design and test the heck out of the thing, and you expect it to work on the first try. Where this is very much SpaceX has taken a very iterative approach to it. And they already have other boosters and other ships that have new and different things. Instead of using hydraulics, they're using electric motors for the thrust vectoring. Lots of little improvements have already happened. So
It would have taken
it's fine
longer
to
to
blow it up.
rebuild the pad than it is to have another one ready to go.
I think we talked about this last time. Did it make sense to blow up the pad? But anyway, I think they're making progress, and they're doing more than anybody else, as far as I can tell, and they're doing it in front of the world, right?
Yep.
I mean, the Falcons are amazing to watch. I mean, and they've been very reliable.
Yeah, I watch every one I can, and I'm still blown away every time that thing lands. Every other company said it wasn't possible or wasn't worth doing.
Yeah. I think the last most heavily used Falcon was 8 landings before they finally called it quits on it.
It landed double digits though, already. I think.
Was it? Well, they had one in particular. They threw away. They said, "Well, we had like 8 launches out of it, and we're going to use it for something else." But that's impressive. Even one relanding, one reuse is impressive.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, it was something else. Interestingly, today, and it's been delayed a few days, so it might not actually happen today. But there's a Falcon Heavy launch, maybe a couple hours after we finish today. And that is unique in that it's going fully expendable, so they don't have the grid fins on it, they don't have the landing legs, and that's a rare thing. It's just that the customer needs that extra performance. But it's amazing that the level of reuse that we have, and that's the goal of Starship too, is to have to be pretty much fully reusable, whereas Falcon 9 is I don't know, what do you want to say, 70% reusable. They don't recover the second stage, but other than that, they land and refurbish and launch again. It's quite impressive. It's nice to feel like, okay, we're kind of in the future.
Right. Yep, we're getting there.
Rockets
are almost like airplanes, right? When Starship and all that is going, it's almost like airplanes, but not quite yet. Alrighty, so that's awesome. I agree. I think it's a success. I don't know why they get so much flack. I guess it's the Elon haters, but it's really cool.
Yeah, and you saw quite a bit of that. His little man's rocket blew up. Okay, you guys clearly don't know what you're talking about,
right?
And you can criticize Elon. He's there's plenty of valid criticism to go around, but I think SpaceX is doing a great job. So,
yep. Definitely one of the areas least critical of him on. All right, so moving on. So we've got some Model S and X supercharger news. Tesla seems to really be pushing this incentive. So Seb, how about you hit us with the details on this one?
Yeah, it's an interesting incentive that, quite honestly, has me a little bit puzzled, because Tesla's been trying different versions of this starting in December of last year. where they offered owners of the older generation cars like mine a $3,000 incentive initially. So if you wanted to trade the car in, they would give you an extra little amount of cash. And now the latest incentive is if you trade in an eligible vehicle that still has unlimited supercharging, like my old 2015, you can then get 6 years of unlimited supercharging, unlimited in quotes, for a new Model S or X if you want to trade in the old vehicle. And so, we talked about this a little bit before the show. And I think what's surprising to me is that the amount of Model S's and X's that get sold out of all the cars is so small. What is it, like 10,000 a quarter, 20,000 a quarter?
Right.
That I didn't feel like Tesla was trying to get these things sold that desperately. I get it at the end of quarter and end of year because they want to, improve the numbers, but they've really started accosting me. Like they're getting pretty aggressive. Like at Christmas, some girl called, and they're always like really young and like super positive. She was probably right out of college. And she's like, "Hey, how about you get a new car?" And I'm like,
"Hey,
do you know
how about you give me some money?"
That's right. I bought mine used, right? So they're still expensive even after the price cuts. But I was like, do you know how much these things cost? Like, I'm not just going to buy a new one because, you're giving me something that's not even as good as what I have on my current car. So, yeah, I thought it was interesting. But Louis, you made a good point, which is, I think for a lot of first EV buyers, this supercharging seems so essential to the EV experience because you feel like you would use it all the time. Truth be told, I've probably supercharged 10 times since I've bought the car. And, Louis, you have solar, I think, right? So
Right.
you can just charge it at home, which is much more convenient.
Free at home, unlimited.
Yeah, I think it's interesting how they're really just trying to get them off the road. I think, and it was funny when the Model S first came out and how, when supercharging first came out, and it was free for life, right? Free, unlimited for life. And there are a couple other little things that they added in there that didn't quite happen. Like, there are going to be solar panels at each one also. So it's going to be, carbon neutral, you're charging. And also there's supposed to be Wi-Fi available too. I haven't quite seen those yet, but it's funny how I wonder what currently what a burden that is on the supercharger system in terms of either blocking when at busy superchargers or the cost to Tesla. I can't imagine, like, they're still like a relatively small number. So, but they seem to have a real reason to want you to end your lifetime supercharging, right?
Yeah, it makes you wonder if they have some sort of reason to move them off the balance sheet. But I think they just want to sell more new vehicles. Honestly, that's my take on it. And they're just trying different avenues to get people to consider trading their cars in. But I love my car. I mean, the thing's going to probably run for another couple of years, I'm hoping. So we'll see.
Well, I think it's true that their best customers are existing customers, right? And so, yeah, there may be something to that. And if you've had a car for a while, you're probably a hot lead or whatever, right? Sales lead in terms of trying to convert you to getting more money out of you. And also a new car these days, there's more subscription type stuff available, right?
Yeah.
So that they can get continuing revenue from you, whether or not you pay for or you could pay $15K for FSD up front, or pay their $200, which
$199.
Yeah, $199 a month. Then there's also connectivity fees. I'm paying for that right now. The $10 a month for premium connectivity, just because I like to have a satellite map.
Yep.
So so I guess there's that. So trying to make sales.
Yeah, I'm hoping that this trend continues where in a few years when they're on hardware 5, hardware 6, whatever, they give me some incentive to trade in my car to buy a new one, right? It's like, yeah, give me some extra money. I have one already. It's not worth it to me. Like, I'm not going to sell my car and buy a hardware 4. It's like, it's not worth it. And you're not going to let me upgrade it. But, eventually I would, if you throw me a little bit of extra towards what I paid for FSD.
Oh, that's interesting. So just as instead of supercharging being free, which you could argue that you paid up front when you bought the car, and now they're converting those to people paying as they go. You could try to get the people that paid up front for FSD to convert to some subscription model.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's it's a likely avenue to transition to, but we'll have to see what happens.
Yeah, except that, as we said, the value proposition needs to be there, and it just isn't quite there right now. So
for sure.
But that would be something, right? To get something, right? Something instead of rebuying every time, to have some sort of carryover.
Trade-in program or something. Give me a discount.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, that would be awesome. So speaking of incentives and demand and all that stuff, we do have a question from chat that maybe we could address now. James Malone says, "What's up with demand?" It looks like some
it's
typos
Troy.
in
It's
here.
Troy Teslike. It's a guy that's on TMC, and also he's a Twitter poster that tends to put a lot of graphs and things about stock related stuff with Tesla.
Gotcha. Okay, so Troy, I'm just going to call him Troy.
Yep.
Says, he's reporting 5 days of closure at Giga Shanghai. And yeah, there's a Chinese holiday during that period of time, but the Chinese holiday is only 3 days. So they're kind of extending the closure for no production. So yeah, I mean, it's possible that has to do with demand, potential issues. I don't know. What do you think, Mike? Do you think demand's been slowing down?
From what I've seen around here, it's definitely gotten softer. The prices have gotten softer here. Demand has gotten softer. There's more competitors available. I see some pretty aggressive marketing from some of the other EV companies locally. Dealers are running ads, this type of thing.
Well, that's the argument that the stock bros are making, or some of them are making, is that Tesla should be doing some marketing instead of dropping the prices.
Yeah, you could argue either way. But I'll tell you, I mean, when I talk to people, everybody in the world that I talk to knows Tesla.
Yeah, sure.
Absolutely. No question. They know it, which is not true for some of the other companies.
Even other companies advertising promotes Tesla.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, that was shown at the Super
We're
Bowl,
better
right?
than Tesla. Yeah.
We're paying millions of dollars for Super Bowl ads. And then if you look at the Google Analytics, it's like Tesla becomes a higher search term. So it's like Tesla is like the Kleenex of electric cars, right?
But
or the Xerox or whatever.
I will say this. I looked a couple days ago, Lewis, and the prices of the prior owned Teslas from Tesla's site have not gone down. They've flattened out, but they're not as low as they were in early January when I bought mine. They haven't done that dip again. So either they're trying to keep the prices up even with a reduced demand, or there just literally isn't enough of a demand.
Yeah. And I thought it was interesting. They did recently raise the prices on Model S's and Model X.
S and X went up a bit.
So how about where you're on the East Coast, Seb, right? So how are you seeing things there? Do you think demand for Tesla is still hot on the East Coast? I know California, Mike says it's a little softer.
I mean, just based on observations, I think it's hard to tell, but I just read an article last week. I think I might get this wrong, but it was the CEO of a major car company. I think it was Ford. And that person claimed that Tesla's designs are getting commoditized because they haven't changed them in a while.
That was Ford.
Okay, thank you. And so, it's just interesting because these design refreshes every year, every couple of years. To me, that's something the legacy automakers have always had to do to generate new demand, right? Because people got fatigue, or they would go to a different brand.
Whatever.
Yeah. So, I mean, as long as Tesla is selling cars, it seems to me the designs are working just fine, And I know we got the Model 3 refresh coming up, but to me, it seems like demand is still strong, I'm not an...
Seb, where Tesla really shines on that refresh isn't the outside.
Right.
It's the inside.
It's features.
I mean, it's like the Gigapress and the one casting they're using for the Model Ys in the rear and the front now. All these production improvements to the car that don't show. I mean, that's really where they put most of their effort.
Mike, I would say it's twofold. One is, for one thing, they don't wait for model years to make any changes, right?
It's
Their
incremental
changes going weekly, right?
They just slipstream it.
Right. And so a lot of those are manufacturing related type things, but some of those are also just like features making the thing better.
Yeah.
And
Heated steering wheel.
yeah, and we're getting, well, they also take away stuff too.
Yeah. Oh, like your ultrasonics. Yeah.
Well, not just that. Like I noticed on my friend's Model Y, like there's no auto dimming of the side mirrors or of the rear view mirror. I'm like,
Oh,
that
really?
was a nice feature. Like, why
That's
doesn't
a
it do
shame.
that? Stuff like that. So, but things are coming and going. But also just the software updates. Like we're getting new functionality. I think that's pretty cool. So the car, as an owner, is always feeling pretty fresh.
Fresh.
Yeah.
And especially with the FSD beta, it's like, oh, here's a new thing. Oh, I can freak out my passengers by making fart sounds or whatever. Now I can do it remotely from the app. Like, so yeah, I think being a slave to the styling is that's kind of old school. I'm happy as long as it drives. It's sort of a funny aside. Like I've been on the West Coast for a little bit, and while I'm here, I've been driving a 2013 Model S, and so
They still
that's an
have
older
those.
car.
That still
Yeah.
runs.
It's an
How many
older
battery
car.
pack swaps is ahead?
I don't know. I tell you a funny thing about it is that the motor has this whine, and the cars of that era, there was a design flaw in the transaxle. So, and this car doesn't have that many miles on it, so I'm a little nervous that it's going to fail while I'm driving it. But it has this, and then if you accelerate enough, there's even a whistle like at the top there. But
Right.
it's so fun. It's so fun to drive, and it doesn't have autopilot at all. Doesn't have many of the bells and whistles, but it's still a joy to drive, especially when you need to pass somebody and it just goes. So I don't know, a car like that, I feel like even without the features I could drive forever. And with my own Model 3, I'm constantly impressed with it. And then also with even like the FSD beta, even if it's not up to what we'd really want for self-driving, it's still fun and interesting to get the download, to put in the update, and then to try it out and see what's changed.
Absolutely.
Or even just things like user interface changes or increasing usability, making some fonts a little bigger or whatever. That's cool. So I don't feel the need for it to look different.
I mean, that alone is heads and shoulders over what other manufacturers are doing. I mean,
Right.
Look at Volkswagen. Their ID4, the software is just garbage. They just can't seem to figure out how to do software.
I was traveling maybe last year, and I saw that car for the first time. I think it was in the UK somewhere. I'm like, oh, that looks kind of cool.
It's not
looks
bad
like
looking.
a cool car, and
Yeah.
the interior looks, from the outside looking in, it looks
It's
pretty
not
cool.
bad on the inside. We sat and drove one around, but the software just isn't there.
And that seems to be an issue with everybody. I mean, I hear things about Lucid having bad software or slow software. Like,
Yeah,
so
I heard
come
the
on.
slow.
So I don't know.
I think Rivian got it right.
You think so?
I think so. Yeah. I think
Yeah.
Rivian, at least to me, seems like has copied closest from Tesla. Not to say they've, stolen the designs, anything, but I think they've followed the playbook very closely.
If you see what works, it makes sense to follow it.
Yep.
Yeah,
I was going to say, I think Volkswagen and Ford and some of the others literally looked and saw what worked and said, nope, we can do it better. and maybe not.
Well, I was going to say that Rivian also followed the playbook by raising the prices after people already paid deposits, but
that's funny.
But that's an old story that you have to be a really old veteran to even know what that's referring.
But I thought they backtracked on that after some.
Oh
pressure.
yeah, they did.
Giving me flashbacks. This is like 20 episodes ago we talked
Yeah,
about
that was an early episode.
Well, but see, I mean, and just like we were talking in the pre-show, Cadillac did that. They've actually done that. They took the reservations and they said, sorry, reservation can't be fulfilled. You now have to reapply for a 2024. By the way, we've changed the price. By the way, we've changed the feature set. And by the way, the dealer sets the final price.
Did you get your deposit back?
Not yet.
How much was the deposit?
$100.
Okay, so
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, but they asked me why. So you can't just cancel your reservation on the app like you can with Tesla. You have to call their concierge service and you have to talk to a person. And they said, well, why are you canceling? And I said, well, because you didn't deliver, you didn't do this, you didn't do that. No, by the way, I bought a second Tesla. And that was like the end of the conversation right there.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like trying to cancel cable companies, and you're just finally like, look, I have fiber, and then they're like, oh, and they just give up. They know they're not winning that argument.
Right.
Oh, right on. So lots of interesting things there. All right, so moving on. Speaking of legacy, I guess legacy automakers, as we were just discussing, big news at a GM. They're axing the Bolt. What is this?
What a dumb thing to do.
What a dumb decision. Oh man, I don't know. Seb, what are your thoughts on this? What are you feeling? Can you believe it? Are you shocked?
I'm not as shocked as you guys, so I'm going to let you guys go first, I think.
All right.
Well, look, I'll say that I was impressed with the Bolt when it came out. I thought this was a perfectly fine utility car, a nice get around car, relatively low price. And I liked the way they managed the higher end features, like the bird's eye view type stuff. And it had like this sort of a display in the rear view mirror. So it kind of, when you used it, it kind of felt like you were looking through your rear passengers, right? As you look in the mirror and you see behind you without the people behind you. It's kind of neat. And that was a great little car. I didn't really want it because it had the front wheel drive, and I want performance. Like, you step on the accelerator and you just end up getting the wheels creaking a little bit because it's in the
I mean, it's a GM. I mean, what are you? No, I'm just kidding.
What are you gonna do? But I thought it was a fine car, and I'm like, I really don't understand them because they, a couple years back, canceled the Volt with a V, which I thought was an excellent introductory car to people to using EVs. It was, if you're only going to have one car, what a great car to have, right? Your daily commute is all electric. You got a useful range of $50, not a 50 miles.
$50.
A $50 range. No, if a useful
How many
range of
dollars
50
is your
miles.
range?
As opposed to like the Prius, which was doing something ridiculous, like 10 or 15 or something. And so I thought that was a great car. And the second version of the Volt was, the first one I thought was a little bit too plasticky and just kind of lame. And the second version was an improvement, and every point was an improvement. The interior is better, the driving experience was better, the interface was better. In terms of like the infotainment system. And I don't know why they killed that either. Again, I don't think they should have killed the EV1 back in
no kidding,
back in the late 90s or whatever, early 2000s. So I don't quite understand what's going on with them. They talked about a bunch of new EVs coming out, but okay, but you have these guys that work, right? Why would you kill these? So,
Doug just killed his mic.
Yeah, just like my mic. Sorry about that.
Don't you guys feel like
he's getting excited there? Yeah.
Do you guys maybe feel like it's played its part in kind of accelerating the transition? Because it used to be that Tesla was the only game in town, right? And then you had a couple of proper efforts by the legacy automakers to have a different alternative come to market.
Proper efforts.
Yeah.
Did I mishear you?
Well, it was, let's say a first effort. Let's say a first effort, right? Because to me, right now, we're kind of moving toward this new era of the Silverado EV. To me, it looks really cool, right? We got the electric trucks coming out. Yeah, it's expensive. That's true. So I guess if we're just talking affordability, do we feel like that car is going to be missed because of that reason?
I do. And my glasses are a little colored on this. I've got 3 kids of driving age, one in college, one will start college this fall, and another's not too far behind. And getting an $80,000 EV or even a $40,000 EV is really tough, for a college kid. Whereas the Bolt, especially with the rebates right now, you can buy a brand new Bolt for about $20K, if you shop around. That's within the realm of possibility for a college student, you know, with mom and dad helping a little bit.
That's how much my first car cost, 20 grand.
Yeah, I
new.
mean,
So, like,
and like Doug is saying, it's a great little car. I mean, is it a Cadillac or a Tesla? No, but it's not intended to be. It gets you around town. It lets you go up see your friends, you know, take a road trip or so and have a good time. 3 years, you move up. You know, it's a great entry level EV, and we just don't have that many of them.
I guess the issue, I mean, it must be on some level the profitability for GM, and maybe they couldn't sell it at the price they wanted. I know in the interim there, like things like the Fiat 500, I believe Chrysler was losing money on every one of those they sold.
Chrysler loses money no matter what they do.
And if GM is now focusing more on trucks and large vehicles, and that's what people in this country tend to want, and then maybe they can get a larger profit margin on those things.
So we're going to use all the Bolt batteries in the Hummers. Got it.
I guess. But it is kind of sad. I think the Bolt was a good car, and particularly the Volt, losing the Volt, I just didn't really get that, except that maybe that was also expensive, maybe expensive to service. It's kind of a complicated system.
How much was the Volt? Do you remember? Are we talking like
50?
Really?
I think so.
Yeah.
I don't remember exactly, but when I looked at it, it seemed reasonable.
The 2019 Chevy Volt started at 35,000.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah,
So 34
cheap.
and change.
That's cheap. Yeah.
So yeah. So I mean, I wonder. Honestly, I'm wondering how much of this was more of looking forward. You're right. You're probably right that they couldn't really be as profitable as they wanted to be, because as Tesla lowers their prices, they had to. You know what I mean? Like people, the equation becomes less in their favor. Of they can't really raise their prices and make more money off of it. And now with Tesla shooting, you know, basically going to have a rumored, so all this is rumored, new cheaper car, possibly
Model 2.
Oh yeah, the Model 2. That maybe they're just like throwing in the towel early.
Yeah,
right? They're just
that'd be my thought.
We might as well pivot now because we're not going to be able to win this game. Because you know Tesla has better margins than any other car company out there.
Yep.
And they're only doing EVs, and everyone else, their margins are the worst on EVs. So, you know,
yeah, that's a really good point.
how much that was a factor.
And then, Mike, I think you actually do bring up a good point, because I've been a proponent of buying used Teslas for a really long time. Mine's used. I have a lot of pre-owned things.
Both of mine are used.
I'm just a fan of buying things pre-owned. And so I think a Model S you can probably pick up relatively cheap now if you get an old one, but it doesn't have warranty, like a really old one, right? I mean, mine's almost 10 years old.
Sure.
But it doesn't have warranty. So if you have the option of buying something like a Bolt at a reasonable price and it's new, that is a nice value proposition. Yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah.
Well, it's disappointing. Because we need more of those, and yeah, Tesla's talking about doing that. You know, there's an argument to be made that Tesla should just stay high end, as opposed to having to.
That would be my preference. I want them to be a luxury brand, but they don't want to build luxury cars because, as I've said before, even the S and X are not luxury cars. They're awesome pieces of technology, but they just don't match up from a luxury standpoint of other cars and luxury.
So they're not a Mercedes.
I want them to be,
Audi,
but they don't. Exactly. But they don't seem to want to be. They want to be the utilitarian, like everyman car, like mass market.
And like I've said in the past, if you're going to have Toyota prices, you need to have Toyota service, because I mean, you'll have people that have, you know, nice high end vehicles and they're used to it taking a while to get serviced. It's like they have another car or whatever because they're in that income bracket. The person that has the one car that is, you know, is cheaper, they still expect good service and things to be taken care of. And Tesla, you know, really needs to scale their service in a way to make that experience reasonable for folks that, you know, aren't going to be as forgiving as a lot of the early adopters are.
Do you think they might ever outsource their service?
No, I mean,
I'm just asking the question. You know,
they outsource in a way. I mean, they have a, you know, sort of certified body shops, that kind of thing. So
I thought they gave up on that.
No, that's a thing. So if your car gets in an accident, but those body shops are still waiting for parts. So
Right.
So in a way, they've outsourced that bit. Tesla very much likes to be vertically integrated, though. So
That's true. That's
you know,
very true.
I don't really see it, but you know, that sort of service type stuff that takes people interacting with people, that doesn't seem to be as important to them. So I don't know. I think they really need to invest in that and spend more money on service. And you know, they claim, and I think it's mostly true, that their cars are pretty low maintenance, and that's true. But when something goes wrong, particularly getting in an accident,
Yeah.
you know, you need your car taken care of, and you need parts. So and at least from what I've seen on the forum over years, when the Model S first came out, service was amazing. Everyone was really happy with service. And in fact, you know, statements Elon has made in the past was, something's wrong with the car, you drop it off, you'll get a loaner car, and that loaner car will be the best version. I did it again. I hit my mic again. I'll just sit back a little bit. That car will be the best version that Tesla has to offer, right? Like if you have your you have your Model S, and you'll get like the whatever it is, probably the P100D or whatever at the time, and it'll be the best car. And if you wanted, you could just keep that car. And nowadays they barely have enough loaners. You're lucky if you can argue, then they'll give you some Uber credits.
I was going to say, I went home last time in a Prius with Uber. So
I didn't even get to test drive a Model S before I bought my Plaid, right? Like there were no Model S's to test drive, let alone loaners.
Right. So the service experience has gotten worse. I've noticed it to get, at least my personal experience has gotten a little bit better as they have made a few new like service centers that were like, one was sort of closer to where I was. Okay, this is a little better.
Yeah.
So
I'll say this. So the last 3 times I've called the Mobile Ranger, their mobile service technician, out, instead of taking 2 weeks, it's down to about a 2 or 3 day wait. So I don't know if they've got more of them or there's just less people using them. But either way, I've gotten better service out of it. So I'll call that a win.
Yeah. So there are pluses and minuses. But to bring us back, if they're going to do a low-end car, that means they'll sell more cars. That means the stuff really needs to scale.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And I guess they'll invest more in making sure nothing goes wrong with these cars. And I suppose they can also do remote diagnostics and all that other thing. So
I gotta say though, their pioneering of mobile service is probably a reason alone for me to buy another Tesla at some point in the future. The convenience of that,
as long as they keep it up,
right?
I mean, yeah.
And you know what's funny about that is that's born out of necessity. That came out when they first launched the Roadster. You know, you have people with Roadsters all over the world. Well, let's just start with the U.S.
Right,
all over the U.S., but they're fairly concentrated in like the Bay Area and Seattle back then. But you had some people in Texas, people in other places, some people in Hawaii, right? And at that time, they had only 2 service centers, one in LA and one in the Bay Area. And so yeah, they needed to send somebody.
The factory is now the service center. I don't care what they say.
No, it was a service. So this wasn't the factory. This is before the factory. I'm talking about in the early Roadster days.
Oh, with the tint. All right.
This was just and it wasn't even. It was a tint. It was a Chevy. Used to be a Chevy dealership.
Was that the Chevy dealer, the original?
That's where they were putting the cars together, pretty much. The bodies came from England, and they put the engine and they put the motor and the battery pack there. But so anyway, if they needed service, and those cars needed things fixed on them periodically, like the trunk wouldn't close, or the little switches in the door wouldn't work, and they'd have to fly somebody. I remember talking to Bob Sexton. They had to fly him out to Hawaii to fix somebody's car or whatever. And so they needed to be mobile then, because they didn't have service centers yet. And I think it's a good way to do things, particularly since a lot of stuff can just be fixed in a parking lot or in a driveway.
Well, I've got a guy coming out Tuesday to fix the driver door handle on my car because it doesn't want to close every time when you open it. I mean, why take my car to a dealer for an entire day for something that's going to take him 30 minutes to fix? I mean, that's silly.
All right, so we're gonna move move on to more topics. We could talk about this all day, obviously.
We could.
All right, so there was an update that came out in the earnings call on the Tesla 4680 battery cells, which personally I find interesting because it was a big deal on Battery Day. What was that, a year ago? I don't even remember.
Something like that.
This was a while ago. But they finally gave us an update on how the manufacturing is going, what some of those numbers look like. Who wants to talk about this? Doug?
Me?
I mean, I can talk about it. I don't mind. All right.
Yeah. Why don't you talk about it?
Okay. So, 4680s, that was all the rage. They're, manufacture them in Texas. There's Model Ys that have them, right? For those that remember. Anyway, so the big news that came out at this point is not really technical. It's purely, the stock bros maybe will care because it's all about, capital expenditure costs and efficiency and ramp up time and all that kind of stuff. But basically, what they've claimed is that they're partway through hitting 70% lower capex per gigawatt hour than a typical cell factory. So that'll be a big deal when they get there. To me, I'm always skeptical when people say, yeah, we're working towards this goal. And it's like, doesn't mean you're going to hit the goal just because you're working towards it, but we'll see. But they seem to say they're on the roadmap for that. The thing I found more interesting is that they actually they say they're on a second generation design of their tabless cells. So the 4680 back in the day, all the news was around how it's tabless, blah, blah, blah. It's more efficient in the design, less energy loss, which basically means it's cheaper to manufacture and you're able to get better range out of the number of cells that you have. And it's also more efficient for recharge and cycles. Anyway, so they have a better design for it now that's easier to manufacture, because I know they were struggling with manufacturing it for a while, but they seem to say they have a better version. The other interesting thing is the cathode material. So basically, Tesla has a facility set up in Austin that they're building out to essentially build the cathodes or to make the cathodes themselves in-house. They have a better process, and their production, they said it's 50% of the equipment and 75% of the utilities are installed in the building. So they're getting close, they're getting there. They're over halfway done with setting up the facility to manufacture the cathodes for the battery cells in Austin, which will obviously help with the production of the battery cells. So that was interesting. And the other news was their Corpus Christi lithium refinery is breaking ground next month. So in a couple days, in May, it'll be breaking down soon, or breaking ground soon, not breaking down, breaking ground. It's been a long podcast. No, so anyway, so that'll be exciting to see. Basically, Tesla they're worried about supply chain. They're worried about, can they get enough materials for their batteries? So they're building their own facility to do some of the refining, take some of that raw material, refine it into the grade that they need to
vertical integration.
Cells. Vertical integration, right? That whole Tesla thing to make the stock price go up. So anyway, so that's the news. Any questions?
Thank you, Professor.
I'd be interested if they could really increase the energy density on those cells. When the cells first came out, people were talking about, it's got 1.5%, 1.5 times as much capacity. I'm like, well, that's as much more volume you have per cell. So it's not like
right.
That's not impressive yet. But I think it's I'm glad that they're actually doing this kind of work, right? Again, as part of that vertical integration, like GM, are they designing battery cells? Right? Are they working?
I don't
on that
believe
kind of
so,
stuff?
but
Right?
maybe, but I don't think so.
They should be, right?
They should be.
I don't know.
Mike's like saying maybe they shouldn't be based on what he's seen them design. So
I don't know.
That's fair. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely one of those things. I think Tesla, their big edges out of compare their competition is basically software, right? Their charging network, and then their ability to manufacture more effectively, like basically having better margins. And a big part of that, I think, is their vertical integration and their superior battery access, right? Like other manufacturers don't put as many batteries into their cars. And I think part of that is they can't. Right.
And you've got a valid point, because, some of the bigger players have got some of the worst efficiency ratings out of their cars, even though they've got bigger packs, and they just can't seem to squeeze the power out of it that Tesla gets, for a variety of reasons.
Well, and that's that shows the benefit of that vertical integration, right? It's real systems engineering that you can work, top to bottom and optimize everything, instead of having a bunch of contractors, delivering here's this part, here's this thing that is supposed to do the thing. Whereas if you can, do everything in house, then you can decide, okay, maybe we don't need that part. Right?
That's right.
And that can certainly increase your efficiency.
There's also the notion, right? Like when say you have like 100 companies all optimizing various parts, right? They're all different vendors. When they get their own costs down, they're not automatically giving those costs the savings to Tesla, right? They're maximizing their own profit. So you have agreed upon prices, they improve the ratio of cost, and they're making more money. Tesla doesn't see that. But Tesla owns the whole thing. All of those efficiencies are right into their bottom line, right? Like that's more savings. So I think there's, the capitalist argument of, everybody's looking to optimize, and it's good to have this, separated groups of individuals trying to do their best work, to save costs. It's like, that's good for the individuals. That's not good for the guy that wants to buy all of those things, and the Tesla in this case.
I mean, that only works if there's another supplier that offers the same thing cheaper, right?
Exactly.
So
and in a lot of these vertical integrated markets, like there's not that many suppliers that can provide the part, right? There's only one company that can make this thing that you need. So there's no real price competition. But yeah, so we'll see how that goes. But exciting stuff. Hopefully, I think the density stuff is really what they failed to deliver so far in the battery. Is they failed to show any actual like breakthroughs in the tech itself working better. What they've showed a lot of is how much cheaper can we make our cars, how much money can we save, which is important. But they haven't actually showed like, the 4680s are actually better, are performing better than other cells. So it'll be interesting to see where that ends up if they get anywhere. Oh man. Alrighty. So I guess this is super quick. Texas folks. So I know Jones won out there. This will affect you. There's a few of you guys.
Poor guys.
Regulars on the show. Texas, it looks like, is passing. So the House passed it. I guess it's got to be signed by the governor. We won't get into politics, but they're adding a $200 EV registration tax, which I'm just really irritated with. It's complete nonsense, because we're paying tax on the electricity. So that's another way they can get money, right? There's all the taxes on that. But the roads have tolls and stuff like that. Like, anyway, it's ridiculous. So I'm very irritated it just goes through.
Is this just about revenue, or is there something, I don't know, is something ideological about it?
I feel like it's political. Like I feel like part of it is just, they want to stick it to the man. They are the man. They want to stick it to the regular guy. The man is sticking to us.
You're sticking it to the tree hugger.
What state was it that wanted to outlaw EVs by 2035? It was
like Montana or something.
Montana, Wyoming, something like that.
One of those.
So is it along those lines? Like, okay, let's just charge EVs more because you're not paying your gas tax. And
I mean, Tesla's okay. It was Wyoming, not Montana, or I don't know, one of those. But I mean, Tesla's headquarters is here, right? Like, we're generating a lot of money for Texas. You would think that they wouldn't want to be getting all upset, or attacking EVs. Granted, we're also a big oil state. You got all the stuff out of Houston. So it's definitely a balance. I think it's a mix of, screw the tree huggers, and
it's funny, Lewis, that you guys got that bill, and we'll assume it will pass because it probably will. Whereas here in California, 21% of all new car registrations in 2023 were EVs, and yet there's not a bill on the table yet for any type of additional tax. Although I expect that hammer to fall pretty soon. They'll find us.
I think that's a good point, though, because this is like basically just a prejudice, right? I don't know if there's data behind it, but I would imagine Texas is maybe a little bit more conservative in the buying behaviors, right? I mean, I don't know what the data is. Maybe it's like number 2 behind California. So don't you guys just feel like maybe it's the revenue opportunity, like Doug said? There's now a lot of Teslas on the road. There's other EVs. Why not follow suit and do what other states are doing and levy that tax?
Well, I would expect that California had been first in line.
Yeah, I mean, I would think that the percentage of EVs is such that it ends up being not that much money. What do you think, Lewis? You're in Austin, which probably has the largest number of Teslas.
I definitely see a lot of Teslas here, but it's still nowhere close to California, right? Like California, when you're there, you see Teslas.
They're everywhere.
Every other car, right? Like they're just all over the place. There's a lot of Teslas here, though. Like you won't drive a minute and not see a Tesla. You'll see Teslas all over.
Well, my main concern about it is that we were talking about lower end EVs, the Bolt and things like that, and it would an EV ownership is relatively cheap. If you set aside the car itself being very expensive, if you can get cheaper cars, then the normal actual cost of operation is pretty low, and it makes sense for lower income people, and to then charge them $200 a year for that has nothing to do with how far you're driving, how much energy you're using, how much wear you're putting on the roads. To me, it seems like the worst kind of a vehicle fee, because it's just in terms of fairness. Like, how can we do these things? How can we do things in a fair way? and this is probably the least fair.
If they wanted to actually do something similar to with the equivalent of a gas tax, they could tax electricity specifically for charging EVs, right? You could put a tax on the rates at superchargers and public chargers.
Oh, don't give them ideas.
I don't want them to do that. I mean, it doesn't affect me. I only charge at home. No, I'm just kidding. So I think they shouldn't do that. I think it's a lot of nonsense. I think this is just a stupid money grab. It's just like the states, what is it, Michigan? Don't they? I think theirs is $800 or something, or
what?
Seriously, to register an EV, it's a ridiculous surcharge because they basically have the legacy automakers there, and it was a way to punish people switching over to Teslas or to get EVs. So I mean, I think it's nonsense. I think that, let's put it this way: in Texas, I had to pay sales tax on my car. Right? EVs cost more. They got a crap load of sales tax off of me, over 10 grand in tax on when I bought my car, right? That's nuts. So do they really need and you already have registration, all the other types of things. They have tolls on the road. That's another option, right? You have tolls on the road. If I drive on it, I'm paying tolls.
Texas has a lot of toll roads.
So it's kind of crazy that you're oh yeah, and on top of it, we're gonna screw EV owners. Come on. Do
you at least get free access to HOV lanes?
We don't have HOV lanes.
Okay.
we have paid express lanes. So we have express lanes where you pay more money to use them. And I shouldn't say Texas is huge, right? I've been to 2% of Texas. So there might be parts that have HOV lanes, but where I'm at, there's express lanes but not HOV lanes.
Okay. Because that's what I get. It's not worth $250, but at least you get a little something,
Right. Yeah. And honestly, the express lanes here, at least in Austin, are really stupid because they're generally one lane express lanes. So you get one slow jerk and it's no longer an express lane, right? I might as well have stayed. So depending on time of day, if it's rush hour, then yeah, I'll take the express lane because even going slower, it's still better than bumper to bumper. But rest of the time, you're almost better off always not being in the express lane that you pay for. So anyway. Wow. Anyway, Texas road rant. Oh, over.
There was a comment that showed up. I saw about. Can someone put that up?
Yeah.
electrified light vehicle.
There we are. Electrified light vehicles. Is there a chance of further price reduction on Model 3? Inventory without reservation is also up on the Tesla website. Well, I got a newsflash for you. I don't know about a price reduction, but you can get your Model 3 with the full $7,500 credit if you lease it. That's a loophole that's legal right now. And you can buy it and not get your tax reduction, or you can lease it and get the tax reduction. So
deduction. Yeah.
It's a reduction in the price. So
okay.
take your pick. That's the best we can do for you.
Huh.
Oh man, yeah, that's fair. That's good advice. If you're worried about getting it cheaper, there's some.
We were talking about the prices moving around, and they might go up and down, and Tesla seems to have no.
Yeah, it's like a yo-yo.
It's hard to predict. It occurs to me though that that if you got your car from a dealer, like that would happen, right? Like the dealer would see, how much this car is in demand, and they'll change the amount of that they'll tack on to that. So we've been sort of insulated from that. I guess this is just more of a direct way of seeing it, right? Because the vehicle's MSRP wouldn't have changed, right, from the dealership, but the dealer will change what their fee is, right? Yeah. Okay, great. Thanks. I'm so proud.
All right. Anyway.
We'll skip that.
Okay, so let's see. Only other thing I'm seeing to talk about here is the Electrify America power stations improving. So what's going on with that? Is there a new cord or something going on there?
Yeah. So what they're doing around me. Okay, let's back up a second and give a short little history lesson. EA has got a horrible reputation in a lot of places for not working, not delivering the power that's advertised, hard to use. And they're hard to use because they've got these really thick, stiff cords attached to the station. Mm-hmm. And they're liquid cooled, whatever. Someone's finally starting to listen. And I've got an EA station not too far from here that they've gone through and they've retrofitted the cords with these new black, very flexible, slightly thinner cords than what we had. And it works well enough now that on my i3, I can just plug it in and charge. Whereas before I kind of had to plug it in, hold the cord up, and then reach around to try to turn everything on because the cord was so heavy, it was deflecting the fender of the car. So we'll call that a win.
Yeah.
And they're still too short. They're still really short.
Okay.
You've got to get right up next to the charger and hope you don't hit the little bollards on the process, or it's going to be a bad day. So if they
is this like a thing they're doing everywhere that you know of, or is this? I
don't know. I don't know. I mean, this kind of came out of the blue, and I've got 4 other stations I'm watching because I tend to use CCS a lot, so I kind of circle around and use all these. I'm hoping so. I mean, God knows they could use some good news.
Fair. All right, so let's see. Mike in the chat asks a question. Let's go to that. So please explain how the tax deductions work. I've had some heated discussions on website. You have to owe $7,500 in tax, right? Who wants to tackle this? I mean, the answer is sort of, but not, it depends on what you mean by owe. You have to pay in for the year $7,500 in tax. That doesn't mean at the end of the year when you do your taxes that you have to it's not that part of the owing. So if you look at your total tax contribution for the year, the government gets a chunk, right? If you have at least $7,500 that you would have paid, that you've paid the government either through your normal paychecks getting it taken out, or if you withhold completely, you don't pay anything, and then at the end, you would get that money back. But to our Mike's point, if you lease the car, the dealership is getting the $7,500.
Right. You get the
so
credit
you're just getting
front.
A reduced price of $7,500.
Right. Instead of waiting to the end of the year on a lease, you get the credit. You see my air quotes here. The credit up front as a discount on the price of the car.
And then you're technically not getting it for your taxes. You're just getting it on the price of the car that you're leasing. But yeah, so but anyway, so yes, taxes are complicated and people
talk to your
always seem to
professional,
struggle with them.
professional tax preparer.
But yes, so basically, as long as you make enough money that the government is taking $7,500 from you in the year, at some point, you will get that back. You'll get $7,500 back,
or you'll get $7,500 off what you owe,
or you'll get 70. Yeah, either way, right? And if you owe that kind of money back at the end of the year, then you hopefully have an accountant or a tax professional, or you're doing something. Yeah, it's not okay. So that's the thing. Okay, so Mike's asking. He says it used to be reduce your AGI, adjusted gross income. Anyway, like you did. Yeah, it's not a tax. It's not a reduction to your taxable income. It is actually $7,500 that the government is not giving you, or not taking from you, I should say. So yeah, that's the difference.
Just for the record, Lewis is not a tax professional, nor does he play on TV.
Okay. Well, okay. So I have done taxes for years. I do taxes all the time, but I am not a CPA. So go talk to your CPA.
Right. This advice is worth what you paid for it.
Yeah.
I don't think it will help ending the arguments on the website either.
And it won't help. It will not help ending arguments on the internet. So anyway. So cool. I think we've covered all the topics that we were going to cover. Yeah. Anyway, Seb, welcome. It's great having you.
Thank you so much. Tesla. Thank you.
We need that counterbalance, that pro Tesla voice.
Yeah,
we're not anti-Tesla.
I know we're not anti-Tesla, but a lot of people think that we are. So it's like,
it's because we say how it is.
Yeah,
we're not fanboys.
We're pro Tesla consumer.
We're pro the consumer. And if that looks, it's not anti-Tesla. It might look that way just because we actually want the consumer to get the fair shake, and we want service to be better. That's not
what FSD to work.
Yeah. So these are valid criticisms, and we want everybody to have a better outcome.
But we all love our Teslas and continue to buy their products, and will likely still do so.
The fact I bought a second one says a lot. I mean,
you crazy man. All right. 3 kids. What is that? I don't even know. I don't know how you do that. Anyway, that's a whole nother podcast. All right. So as always, thanks everyone for hanging out with us. Thanks for the questions, comments, and your support. If you like the show, feel free to like and subscribe, hit the bell, do all those YouTube things. You can go over to teslamotorsclub.com and become a supporting member. That helps the website, which in turn helps the podcast. And this was episode 40. We've got 40 of them in the can.
They're only getting better,
and they're only getting worse. Have you seen how terrible?
Doug
smacked his mic like
now.
5 times.
We have said we've upped our game.
I talk with my hand, and it's not my normal microphone.
Yeah,
it's right there.
Whack, 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 whack.
It's almost like we've not been doing this before. All right. Anyway, so as always, that's a wrap. Thanks for hanging out with us, and we'll see you guys next time.
Bye.